Hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. We are concluding today chapter 26, and this is dealing with that second census. If you haven't listened to these previous episodes regarding the second census, I encourage you to go back and listen to them. Today we're concluding, and there's just a few verses, but I wanted to point this out so that we fully understand this. And this is taken from Numbers 26, verses 63 to 65. And it's entitled, "The God Followers Will Be a Minority." All right. So let me read that. That's Numbers 26, verses 63 to 65. It says, these were the results of the registration of the people of Israel as conducted by Moses and Eleazar the priest on the plains of Moab beside the Jordan, across from Jericho. Not one person on this list had been among those listed in the previous registration taken by Moses and Aaron in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Lord had said to them, they will all die in the wilderness. Not one of them survived except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. Okay. If you were listed on that first census, you weren't listed on the second census, all right, because you were dead. And so everybody died except two people. And those two people were Joshua and Caleb. And what's the importance of those two guys? They were they were two of the 12 spies, but they were the two spies that stood up and said, we believe we can take the land. And we believe in our God that, the land is going to be tough, but we believe our God can give us this land. Okay, so it was only those two guys. Okay, so you had this minority of these two guys standing up and saying, we believe God can take care of us. And the rest of the spies influenced the whole nation to complain and whine and complain and say, oh, no, we can't go into the land because there's giants there and we're like grasshoppers and so forth. All that stuff. So these two guys were a minority. Imagine you have a nation of at least 2 million people, okay, and there's only two guys standing up for what's right and following God. And that was Joshua and Caleb. That was it. All right. And you had Moses and Aaron on also. But it was only Joshua and Caleb. And it was only those two guys that went into that promised land from that generation. That was it. Okay. Huge minority there. I also want to take you back. We went back a few days ago. And if you remember, there was that time where the Moabites were trying to seduce Israel, and Balaam had advised them how to do this. Balaam had said, hey, a way you can get to Israel is by introducing idolatry, and you have the women introduce the idolatry. And so that's what they were doing. And so this plague broke out because God was so upset about what was happening. And these Moabite women were coming in and befriending and having sex with the guys there, and then they were inviting them into idol worship. All right, and it got so bad that Moses and the leaders were there weeping and crying out to God about this issue. And one of those jokers comes along, and he's named in the Bible there. He comes along and just doing whatever he wants to do, comes with this new Moabite girlfriend and goes into his tent to have sex, and he walks right in front of Moses and all those guys. Well, it was one of the priests, Eleazar, that stood up and said, this ain't going to happen. And he went in and killed him. Again, everybody else was watching, what was going on. Like, oh yeah, okay, this guy's just walking in with a Moabite woman. It was only one guy that stood up and said, this won't happen. Okay, and that was Eleazar. Again, he was a minority. Everyone else was just standing around watching like, oh, okay. But it was only Eleazar and again, he was a minority. So one person stood up, okay, in that instance. You had Joshua and Caleb stand up earlier on. Those two guys were the only ones that came into the promised land. You're going to find that today. You're going to find that you as standing up as a Christian, that if I'm a Christian man, I'm not having sex outside of marriage. I'm not taking the Lord's name in vain. I'm living for the Lord, okay? And for me to live for the Lord, you're going to find out you're really in a minority, especially when you compare yourself with the world. But sadly, in the church, it's happening too, that I stand up for the Lord, and I say, hey, I'm not going to have sex outside of marriage. And you're like, everyone's like, oh, really? Or you say, marriage is between a man and a woman. And again, you're the minority with that. All kinds of things you are going to find if you're following God, you're following the Bible, and obeying God, you're going to be a minority. It happened then, and it's happening right now. And so I encourage you to stand up. You're going to be a minority, but it was Joshua and Caleb that entered the promised land. The whole nation did not. It was Joshua and Caleb. That was it out of that generation. So stand up, be a minority. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm a regular dude walking in the Word, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue our journey through the book of Numbers. Lord's blessing. I'll see you then.